For all of you who listen to Mac East Second Floor Studios presents Submersion and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android device. I use the app and I love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure to set Mac East Second Floor Studios as a favorite so you don't miss any of our new episodes. Again, the app is the Podcast Republic app, available on Android devices. Episode 43.
Woo! Whoop, whoop. After a long absence.
Yes. We've been gone for 2 weeks, but we wanted to come back big. We have literally everyone on tonight.
And we're going to be recording for like 6 or 7 hours recapping.
We're pretty important people. We live fascinating lives, so our listeners can deal with it.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
What type of fascinating stuff were you doing for our 2 week absence?
I watched the funniest YouTube video ever made.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, what was that?
Our friend Ben in Ohio, who's on the podcast. This Ben, he showed me this video at a cabin that we stayed at together over the weekend, along with 4 or 5 other guys, and it's very fun. It's very funny.
Changed his life.
Changed my life.
We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah,
great.
Let me. I'll play. What, do you guys want to tease? You want to hear a little tease?
Yeah, give us a little tease in that.
Yeah, tease us, man.
All right, let me get the tease going. Play me the tease music.
Oh, it's a teasy time. Time to get teased.
All right, here's the tease. You want to tease at the beginning of the video or tease at the end of the video?
Just doesn't matter. Just tease it.
All right, here we go. 22 seconds.
There it is. There it is.
Great, awesome.
There's the tease.
It's like content. It's good
I
content.
wonder what the heck was going on in all the group chats. He was like, there it is. There it is. What are those guys talking about?
I said it today at work.
Good Lord.
People didn't know what the hell I was talking about.
Anyway, on this episode, we have a interview with Eric Marino. Again, he's back. He's live. Not live, but,
Right.
pre-recorded. He's got some pretty exciting news. He is actually going to be on an A&E biography documentary online.
Wow.
Being interviewed for a submarine, Museum Submarines. And it's great. It'll be at the end of this episode.
Very nice. And to confirm, he's still alive, right?
Yes, he is still alive.
Great.
So you ended up talking about that, and was it Hunter Killer?
We talk Hunter Killer, and we also, talk some things that I've wondered about with submarines, on how on earth they get torpedoes in them, all that type of stuff. Just some good old fashioned sub talk.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to it.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you of all people would not be looking forward to it.
Why?
He probably won't listen to it.
I'm looking.
It will make the episode
I'm
like
looking
2.5 hours long.
Forward to it.
All right.
Dive.
What began as an innocent conversation among friends would soon spiral out of control and later be referred to by future generations as the eighth wonder of the modern world. Mac East Second Floor Studios takes you on the journey of your lifetime as your captains, Alex the Mustard Man, the artist formerly known as Brom, Jamie the Brain, Kyle El Capitan, and Zac the Backbone present Submersion. All right.
Yeah.
We enter the second week of Cold War Movie Month.
Nice. Are we going to insert Brom singing, or is it a new song?
Yeah, I don't have to sing again, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, great.
Who else?
I'm not
else will
singing
sing?
again. Anybody else?
Does anyone else know a song with a cold in it?
Who is
What
that?
song?
Crossfade? I think it's Crossfade.
Baby, it's cold outside.
Is that song about rape?
It is. Yeah. But that's like kind of a tired thing, because
Michael
they've already
Bublé.
started like refusing to play it on radio stations and
Oh,
stuff.
that's a big
So, like,
fucking
everyone knows
lie.
it.
'Cause
I think there's a
all of
station in Cleveland, Ohio that's not playing it.
Right, but didn't you've read the lyrics? It's pretty explicit.
I mean, it has
like-
been for years.
Was it like
I don't have to-
1930 it was written, though?
I don't have to read it. I
Right.
can just hear it on the radio.
Right. Yeah. It's like basically like she's asking like what's in it, what he put in her drink and stuff like that.
Well, it's supposed to be a whole thing. Like, the guy's supposed to be like, what, a rat? No. Isn't he like a cat and the girl's a mouse?
Is that right? It's supposed to be about animals?
If you look at, they're supposed to be animals. No. What else eats mice?
Cat.
No.
I think it's just cats.
Is it just cats? Well, if you look up on Wikipedia, it says,
All right,
like,
what the
song.
what are we
it's-
even
it's-
talking about right now?
It's a mouse and a cat, and the girl's supposed to be the mouse, and the cat's supposed to convince the mouse to stay, and then assault it.
Right.
Great.
So this is the plot
This is the
of
episode
the
we
movie
need
we watched.
we need to submit to the Potty Awards.
Yeah.
See if we
All right.
see if we can win
Alex.
anything.
What did we watch this week?
All right. Well, it was a comedy, although the internet says it was an action adventure movie. Questionable. But it stars Miss Bowling Green herself, and it's called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, made in 1966.
Ooh, did Eva Marie Saint go to Bowling Green?
Yeah, wasn't there a building named after her?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
How did I not even know that?
She's
Probably-
a clue in a lot of
Probably the
crosswords.
second most famous person from BG.
And who's the first? Everybody knows it.
Urban.
Oh, that ice skater.
Oh.
Oh.
Scott Hamilton.
Scott
Oh,
Hamilton
Scott
for
Hamilton
sure.
He even
Urban
got
Meyer
a street named
didn't.
after him.
Urban Meyer coached there. He didn't go there.
He just
Yeah,
coached
that's where he
her.
got his debut.
I still think it counts.
And it's only been upwards and skywards for the Bowling Green football since then.
They're
Hardly.
soaring. Correct.
So anyway, like Alex said, this is a 1966 classic directed by Norman Jewison. Stars Carl Reiner, Eva Marie Saint, and Alan Arkin,
Nice.
who I think we were all very surprised to see because, as many of us had mentioned, we only know Alan Arkin as an old man.
He's an old person.
Jonathan
Generally.
Winters is also in there. Don't forget him.
Sorry, I did not mean any disrespect or bad blood towards Jonathan Winters.
Mr. Winters, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, this movie was also nominated for 4 Academy Awards.
The most accolades we're going to probably see in a film, I would think. Do we?
No,
are we
Das
going to
Boot.
watch? No, but it wasn't nominated for Best Picture.
That's true. Well,
Yeah.
but it had so many awards it was
It
nominated
did get
for.
nominated for a lot of awards, but this one had Best Picture nomination.
Yeah. Best Picture, Best Actor in a Leading Role,
Wow, that's
Best
real-
Writing, and Best Film Editing.
That's really surprising.
And it, Alan Arkin was nominated.
Yeah.
And he was the lead?
And he was
Question mark?
and he was also honestly, I just didn't think he was very good. It seemed like
You bite your tongue.
it seemed like he was like a
It was very
almost like
hokey.
exactly. It was like an improv, like
Yeah.
you're going to play a Russian.
This whole movie felt
I
like
don't know.
improv.
Yeah, it
I
did.
love that, yeah. Yeah.
That's why I loved it.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't even think this is going to take the whole time because when I was sitting there taking notes, I was just like, what do I need to take notes on? But
Kyle,
anyways.
now that you said that, this is
Oh,
going to take
great.
45 minutes.
And away we go.
All right, so we start in 1600s when they first conceived the idea of comedy. No, sorry.
Great.
No, so there's a Soviet Navy submarine, and it's prowling about the United States coast. Now it's off the coast of Massachusetts.
Hey,
Shout
Jim, you
out.
could say it was creeping
It was creeping.
because they said in the movie.
Okay. And everything's in Russian. There's no subtitles. It's supposed to you're supposed to kind of get from what they're doing exactly what's happening. And essentially, the captain, because
These were all American actors, though, weren't they?
They were, yes.
Yeah.
Well, technically, I mean, Theodore Bickel was born in Austria, but he was, I guess, naturalized to the United States and
Is
stuff
that
like
close enough to Russia?
that. Close enough to get an accent reasonably close.
There you go. Cool.
So they were speaking Russian, quote unquote, back and forth to each other, and you get the sense that something's going wrong. And Alan Arkin's character is kind of saying like, "You're going to hit the coast, like turn back." And the captain,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, is like, "Get the fuck out of here."
Yeah, dude.
Get outta
He's
here.
Captain is a little bit hot-headed, and that'll come into play later.
And I can understand why. He probably was like pointing to his pants and was like, "Check it before you wreck it." And then he did wreck it.
You wrecked it right into the coast,
into
man.
the coast. And they kind of explain it later as, or maybe even then in Russian, like he was trying to get a really good close of America, a really good close look at America because they've never been that close to America. And then the maps weren't very good or not correct. So they ended up running aground when they tried to get real close.
They got a pretty good, mapping to that undersea floor.
Right.
What am I even saying?
I don't know. So they then kind of go out on a little boat and go onto shore.
There's
to try
actually
to
this is
figure
a
out-
really cool
They
scene.
pull out a map. We find out we are on Gloucester Island, which is a fictitious
which is not a real island. Sorry,
in
it's not.
Massachusetts.
It's a fictitious. There is a place called Gloucester, Massachusetts, but it's not an island. This is judging by what we see here. Probably this is closer to something like Block Island or Nantucket.
Did this
given the
remind
population.
you of your time growing up on Martha's Vineyard?
It is not very similar because this place was basically bereft of it really didn't have all that much going on. It seems more like maybe parts of Chappaquiddick or Nantucket or something like that, but not most of where I live.
Chappaquiddick.
Exactly.
Oh, and for those of you who don't know, that's where the popular broom sport Quidditch was founded.
Exactly. Fact.
Popularized by a children's story where little people fly around on brooms at Hogwarts.
Right. So they don't want to cause an international incident. They're kind of convinced that the American government would send a plane just to bomb them if they were found there.
Duh.
So they decide to go off and they send a landing party off, headed by Alan Arkin's character, who is Yuri Razanov. He's the political officer. So he's the Zampolit of the ship, which I actually didn't know. I'm just reading it now.
You just called it a ship, buddy.
Sorry, a boat. The boat.
There you
Sorry,
go.
we've been gone for so long that I've forgotten all the terms. And they want to find a motorboat in order to tow the submarine off of the seafloor.
I think the
And
proper
get it
term
free.
is jerk. They want to jerk it off the seafloor.
They just want to jerk it off the seafloor. Right, exactly.
That's what they're doing.
And so we are then introduced to a family called the Whitakers, headed by Walt Whitaker, Carl Reiner, and he is a vacationing comedy writer from New York City, the big city, the Big Apple.
Yep.
And he's basically like lamenting the fact that he's got the second act of his play/comedy play or whatever it is to write, which comes to nothing in the end. It's just the meaningless part of this movie.
Right. They just need him to have a reason to be on the island.
Yeah, I think maybe there was some kind of joke about how like all these zany, kooky, crazy things are happening, and yet he keeps on saying he doesn't have a second act to his comedy, even though like there's a lot of comedy going on around him. I don't know.
And it was kind of funny though when you see him starting or just going through his day. He's kind of scatterbrained, or he's not fully paying attention to what he's doing. This part cracked me up so much. It's just that subtle comedy. Something is stuck in the toaster, and he picks up a fork,
Yeah.
a metal
Yeah.
fork,
Yeah.
to jam it down in there. His wife's like, hold on.
Yeah,
Takes a foot.
don't do that. So he's got an asshole of a kid, Pete, who's not
Wow,
1.5 years
man.
old.
Who he
Call it
says
like
it's
you see
okay
it.
to beat
Kinda
him,
sucks.
right?
I'd say he's American. True American.
He is very, very American, quote unquote. And then got a 3-year-old daughter as well, who's like sleeping upstairs. But they're about to leave the island, and that's why he needs to have finished this thing that he was writing by the time that they go back to New York City, and they're leaving that day. So anyways, Pete sees these Russians prowling around outside. They've kind of come up to the house. They're trying to get a car, but there's no key in there. They need a key to the car to be able to go and drive it and find this motorboat, or they're hoping to find a motorboat there. And he keeps on telling his dad, like, Dad, there's fucking Russians outside. Maybe not in that same language, but close enough.
Pretty close.
Yeah. And the dad's like, screw you. There's nothing out there. You're like a kid. Get out of here. And then
I'm surprised there is something out
right.
there.
So then eventually the Russians decide, hey, we're going to like put on these American accents, pretend to be American. They won't know the difference. And it's like this crazy thing where they sound totally ridiculous.
Oh, it was so funny though, because they come up to the door and the son does ask, "Oh, they're Russian. They're Russian." They're like, "No, we're not Russian. We're Norwegian."
Right. Yeah. So they try to claim that there's something else.
Norwegian is what he said.
Oh, that's right.
And so, yeah, he comes up with a kind of a younger guy and Alan Arkin, and they are knocking on the door. And eventually the jig is up a little bit, right? Because like,
Oh, it's
the
up.
kid,
Almost immediately.
almost immediately. And they pull out their guns and they're like, all right,
Get in that house.
we didn't want to do this, but you got to give us the keys to the car. And so they kind of, and the daughter comes down and they almost like shoot this little child.
Yeah.
Kind of. Not
Comedy
great.
in the 60s.
Would not have been a good look, but they didn't do it.
Right.
And they feel really bad about it, actually. Feels really bad about, like, almost shooting this child or whatever. But they want to get the keys to the car, and they eventually get the keys. And the Whitakers want to tell them that the gas is going to run out in the car. But
He tries to.
Yeah, but the Russians are like, screw off, you're just trying to trick us.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
don't do those tricks.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It's funny because they leave the crazy guy who almost shot the kid. They're like, you stay
Alexei.
here and watch these
Alexei.
people here.
Played by John Philip Law, which sounds like the most American person ever.
It really does.
And his accent was not great.
It doesn't need to be.
Nope. And so they drive off. They actually drive past this hot chick on a bike. They're like, woo, look at that American hot ass.
They even
My
did the
God.
hand motions for tits.
Yeah. They were like,
Oh, yeah, they
holy
did.
shit, America has what? And then she turns out to be like the nanny kind of. She's been taking care of the kids and stuff like that. And she gets to the house, and also, pretty clearly it's going to be this young Russian and her are going to have like a little thing.
Oh, I
Don't
would have
you worry
loved
about
it if it were someone more Mrs. Doubtfire-esque. And they
Really?
were like, oh, yeah, look at her.
Shit.
Now we're talking. No? Nobody likes that?
Well, Mrs. Doubtfire was hot.
Yeah.
Doubtfire was a man.
And a man. So it all would have really like played into this crazy twist at the end.
Wow.
Can you imagine the look on that Russian's face at the end? Oh, man.
Oh, man. I actually really like that storyline of the Russian and her kind of falling in love, but I'll get to that when that starts.
Wow. What are
really.
you, a sap?
Well, no, I just really like the comedy in it. This idea that they are living this like kind of American dream on the beach while everything's going kooky and crazy.
The entire movie takes place in one day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah. That's what I mean. They're like everything, their whole entire life almost happens in this one moment where everything else is happening that's like super crazy. And they're like having long walks on the beach and like
Yeah.
falling in love. And it's like, wait, what the fuck? So weird.
They're just too hot. They just attract to each other.
Yeah. So anyways, the station wagon.
Like eggs on a skillet.
Perfect. The station wagon runs out of gasoline.
Who was hotter, Ben? Which one do you think was hotter?
I'm going to have to go with Mr. Law.
Okay.
I would have definitely had a poster of him up on my wall.
Wow.
The wall of law.
No.
Here's my book of law. Just all these photos and poses. Guess we'll study law later. Yeah.
Just looking at pictures of
It's a
this guy.
euphemism. I'm going to go to my room and study the law.
Oh, God. Hear the pages get stuck together.
Oh, good Lord.
Anyways, continuing on with my recap. The station wagon quickly, predictably, runs out of gas because they told them that. They're all angry and they decide to walk to town. They end up getting to town, kind of on the outskirts, and there's a gasoline or a gas station at the post office. And so they kind of go inside. There's a car outside. They go inside. They kind of bind up the postmistress and hang her on the wall in a chair, and then steal her car.
But it's all, I don't know, like, it sounds malicious, but it doesn't start out that way.
No.
But it has to unfold that. Well, I don't know why they hung her on the wall like that. But
Comedy.
Yeah.
And she is, before she's, hung on the wall like that, she calls the telephone switchboard operator to let them know that the Russians had got her. So this kind of rouses everyone in town, including, we've got the sheriff.
Not right away. The sheriff doesn't really care.
No,
He's
he
like,
doesn't care, but
garbage.
He's called and he has to kind of like very slowly be like, okay, we got to figure out what's going on because we got this call about this thing that's probably nothing, don't worry about it or whatever. So it's him and his deputy, and the deputy has this whole scene of him kind of getting roused, and he's got all these kids, like 1 million kids, and then this wife who keeps on talking about like, what do we do? What do we do if the Russians are here? What do we do? What happens if they rape? What happens if they're here to rape?
Yeah, he did say
And he's
rape,
like,
didn't they?
Yeah, and then he's like, you would run away. And she's like, okay. He's like, but to where? She's like, kind of this like.
I was really waiting for a
stereotypical,
funny response.
I thought so too.
Yeah. He
I
just
thought-
like look at her and be like, really?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I thought was gonna happen, but then they didn't do it.
I know.
Yeah.
Come on.
It was there for the waiting.
It was.
And so they start to kind of very slowly turn things up, but because the postmistress eventually gets freed, she starts to let everyone know outside of the law that something's going on. So
And
all
people
the
were trying to
citizens-
contact her, but the Russians
Yeah.
did cut the phone lines.
Yeah. And so everyone is roused and they start to like become this riotous group of militia, screaming about these Russians and how they're invading. And they're convinced that they were paratroopers and arrived by boat as well.
Mhm.
So they're like kind of everywhere on this island.
But something we didn't mention is that while that nanny was on the way to the house, Walt and the family did attack the Russian guy and got his gun away from him.
Yep.
And then he freaked out and ran outside.
Ran into the dunes. Yeah.
Yep. And then Walt, I don't know, it's really funny when he's handling the gun because you can tell he just has no experience. He's just like literally pointing his gun.
It seemed like he was going to shoot his child.
Yeah. He's just like pointing the gun like right
do
at
you
his
think
kid.
did they plan the whole thing with the window curtain? I mean, it just seemed like such a struggle. For a long time. Like the entire sequence of him getting the gun from the guy, he was so pissed off at that window curtain.
Well, dude, some of the stuff was so funny that they took a long time. Like, remember when they were trying to get the keys from Eva Marie Saint, and they were just like,
with the purse? Yeah, that's like a minute straight of just like, what the hell was the point of that? But I laughed. Yeah. I thought it was hilarious.
I laughed too. It's so funny.
It's just a different era of comedy. It is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
They're not wrong.
And so
people lose
so
purses all the time.
It's hilarious.
so when he runs into the dunes, the Russian, Walt jumps on a bike and decides he's gonna go into town.
And this is where he gives Eva Marie Saint permission to strike his child.
Yes, I love that line.
Yeah. Because the kids keeps on calling him a traitor for helping out the Russians, at least trying to not.
Because he doesn't want to shoot him right in the head. Right.
He doesn't want to kill the Russians. He kind of like understands that the Russians, because the Russians explain like we went up on the beach and we're afraid to get a missile. And he's like, oh, you did what anyone, like a whole bunch of people do, which is run your boat aground. Like you just want to get your boat off of there and then move on your way. And so he doesn't see like how this should be like some crazy war starting thing. They made a mistake.
But don't worry, man, because it will be.
So the kid obviously is seeing it different because he's a patriot. So.
Yeah, sure.
I loved it.
He's the Patriot. I mean, that's actually Mel Gibson, right?
Starring Mel Gibson. Wow, that's young Mel Gibson.
I thought.
Wow. So, anyways, I don't even know. Everything is kind of crazy at this point in terms of what happens when the Russians kind of end up in below like a clothing store, right? Kind of. It's like a place with all kinds of mannequins and stuff. They start to get concerned that all these people are out and about. They're hoping to do this thing or get the boat without anyone really realizing, but all these people have been roused by the postmistress. So they're out and about kind of screaming about Russians and they're like, what the fuck? So they run into this church and they can see the boat they want, which is this big like kind of luxury cruiser.
Yep.
And like, this is what we're going to get our thing off, but they can't get to it because everyone's in front of it. Like shit. So they're kind of stuck. And then when Walt comes in, that he starts to try to rouse people, and at that point, the sheriff.
Well, he's trying to calm them down,
right? Because the sheriff and the deputy have gotten downtown, and they've
really got everybody fired up.
They're like, everyone calm down. And there's like an old World War II veteran who sucks. I hated him so much, but he was like trying to lead everything. I'm the leader. He's got the sword. He like looks like an idiot. Anyways, he is like, I'm in charge, and they landed at the airfield. And so the sheriff's like, well, I'm going to go over there. You guys like, don't do anything stupid. We're heading over there. Like, well, we're also heading over there. So everyone heads off to the airfield, except for the deputy and like a group of people who are supposed to guard the harbor. But then because everyone's downtown, the bar opens up. And so everyone goes into the bar and they're just getting shit-faced.
Oh, yeah.
So that actually definitely sounds...
Natural progression, actually.
That certainly sounds like an island off the coast of Massachusetts.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is how a mob starts.
Right. So then they find like a drunk person who's like just like...
Oh, he is hammered. This might be my favorite guy in the whole movie.
So they find him and he's super like in the way. So the deputy sends him off to warn people on the other side of the island to get his horse. And this becomes like kind of a running gag of this guy trying to get his horse to go over to the other side of the island.
Yeah, because the other people don't have phones over there and they have no idea that the Russians have landed.
Yeah, it's a very Monty Python-esque type thing where every few minutes or so, they'll jump back and have only like a 5-second thing where he's running after a horse.
You're falling down in a field.
Yeah.
It's great.
So Walt makes his way downtown and he goes and is like, there's these Russians, like whatever. And everyone gets super riled up by this. But he's trying to tell them that it's not as bad as they think it is. Because they keep on talking about now it's a boat and they've like paratrooped. And he's like, what paratroopers? What are you talking about? But the Russians see him and realize, oh, this guy escaped, so that he's not in his house or whatever. And they snatch him.
Oh, yeah.
And they pull him into this
they snatch him.
Yeah, they snatch him. And
funny word.
Great. Would you say it's on par with 69 in terms of words versus numbers?
No.
No, 69's better, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so they're kind of being they're in the bottom of this thing, and he's like they're trying to figure out what to do, and he's like, well, upstairs is the telephone switchboard operator, just right upstairs. And they're like, oh shit. And so because he's saying like that's how everything's being warned or whatever, so they go up and they tie him up with the switchboard operator, and kind of put them both to the side. So now there's no communication or anything going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then what else is going on? Alexei.
So during this point, also the Russian that Walt scared off.
Yeah, he comes back. Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to get back in and steal his gun, and then that's when he meets the new young nanny, and he is smitten.
Right,
and they begin falling in love.
Right. Yeah, so they have this whole thing on the beach with a kid. It's almost like they've
got their own little immediate family.
Right. They have this whole American dream and little family already in place. Like they have a child that they take care of together.
Yep.
They're walking along the beach. It's like sunset. Like it's like this beautiful scenario. And he's like, I just want to live my life and be like free and happy. And she's like, I also want to live my life and be free and happy. Come on. And they're like, oh my God, even though I'm Russian and you're American, we both want to live our life and be free and happy. And then they smooch like a whole bunch.
Oh,
and then there's like they get totally naked, and
now,
then they
wait.
What?
Jamie, for our younger listeners, what does smooch mean?
Smooch means that they totally 69, and we see it all explicitly.
There you go, younger viewers or listeners.
Yeah.
Listeners.
Yeah.
Wow.
So don't worry about it.
And Best Picture nominated film.
Yeah, little known fact, this is actually the only X-rated Best Picture nominee ever.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
There went my fact.
So anyways, yeah, so the Russians have concocted a plan where they're going to dress up like Americans, basically, because they're in a dry cleaners, like that's where they are.
Mm.
And
and they're practicing their English. It's pretty funny.
It's horrible. Yeah. So they basically they're terrible at English. And they're basically what the idea is, they're gonna, if they see any Americans, they're gonna tell them to go inside to be safe. But it sounds ridiculous. They sound like cartoon characters.
Mm.
And so a bunch of them go out in these American clothes. And the idea is they're gonna shoot guns on the outskirts of town. Everyone will run away, and then they're gonna steal the boat. So they do this. They go out. They see some people. They scare them because they're like stereotypical Russians.
Scary Russians.
Yep. Shoot their guns. Everyone runs away, and a bunch of the Russians jump on the luxury cruiser and go away, other than Alan Arkin, who stays behind. He's going to go
back to the sub.
He feels responsible for the young guy, so he's going to go back to the Whitakers and then make sure he's okay, and then they'll go back to the sub.
Ooh, but things get a little dicey for old Alan, don't they?
They get real dicey. So anyway, we see the luxury cruiser. They pick up the people who shot their guns, and they go off. So all the Russians are out of the picture on this luxury cruiser at the moment, other than Alan Arkin and the young guy. In the meantime, Walt frees himself from being trapped with the telephone switchboard operator.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of like, they try to move their way because they're all tied. He's tied together with this like old lady. They try to move their way out of the place, and eventually they fall down some stairs, but his family is able to see him because they've also come into town. Yeah, so all these crazy things have happened.
There's all sorts of insanity that's going on in this entire film.
Yeah. And so he's freed as well. So they decide, oh shit, like, we got to go back home because our youngest daughter is there. And
we just left her.
Yeah, we left her. And the young Russian, I was told by Alan Arkin's character, like, is not a coward and will come back. So he's probably there right now with them. So they start heading back as well. They steal a car and then they head back as well.
But anyway, Alan Arkin shows up at the house, and Walt is furious because is their kid missing?
Well, so he can't find the kid at all. Yeah.
Can't find the kid.
He's out down the beach. They're having the American dream.
Yeah. And so he even takes a gun and he starts shooting at Alan Arkin.
It's pretty crazy. I thought he killed him for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But then it turned out he didn't. Also at this time, just to mention, everyone had went to the airport to see if any Russians had been there and get a long interaction with a guy who was like fixing a plane. Yeah. It's actually a really famous actor. Or have you ever seen him in anything? Guy who was fixing the plane?
Maybe, but I don't recognize him here.
He was in Bonnie and Clyde, which is like one of the greatest films ever made. He was the kind of the third wheel of that group. So it's Bonnie, Clyde, and then he's kind of like this...
Daryl?
Is that his name in this movie?
I have no idea.
Oh. It almost sounds right. That might be right. You might have guessed it. But anyways, he's like kind of a famous actor for that because he was, he's got kind of this face that looks... I don't know. What would you describe his face as? Kind of like a potato face. I don't know. It's just like a regular,
Just like dumbfounded.
dumb face. Yeah, kind of. Anyways, so he
It was funny though.
He has a very distinctive face, and he was a famous actor from Bonnie and Clyde.
Daryl.
Old Daryl.
Good old Daryl. And so they're also heading back into town at this point.
But meanwhile,
Yeah.
the Russian submarine had freed itself.
Just by itself.
Yeah, they were able to get off the sandbar.
They had worked a bunch and they got it off the sandbar. So at this point, like nothing would have, like if they just stayed in the boat and just worked at freeing it, everything would have been fine.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, everybody's panicking, and all of a sudden, this giant Russian submarine just pulls into the harbor.
Yeah, because
And people start freaking out a lot
pissed.
more.
He's assumed at this point that
The captain.
the captain of the Russian submarine, because no one came back, assumes that everyone has been captured by the Americans.
By these townspeople on the
So
island.
since he's got the submarine free, he pulls it into harbor to basically threaten them to be like,
he says, I'm going to blow this whole town up in about 2 minutes. And then we get a little
by the way, I
cutscene.
do want to mention Wikipedia says they didn't free it themselves. It freed itself. They thought they freed it. It actually was just the tide rising. So the guy came off the sandbar. That's what it says on Wikipedia.
pretty funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they did not mention that at all. But
Yeah, I didn't. It seemed like they were working at it, right?
Yeah.
But they're saying it's just the tide came up. So
That's
they
funny.
got out.
That makes it even funnier.
That is funny.
So 2 kids want to see the action that's going on with the submarine. So they climb up a bell tower.
Yep.
Ooh.
Gotta hurry, guys.
Yeah, we're right about there. And they climb up a bell tower to get a better view. And there's just a really big standoff going on between the sub captain and all the townspeople, the whole
sheriff.
militia.
Really, it's a sheriff. And then Alan Arkin's kind of translating because he's kind of in between. He actually has come to kind of like the Americans.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of like translating in between.
Yeah. And so the sheriff is going to arrest the captain, he says. You're
Yeah.
under arrest. What's your address?
Yeah. So
Like
everything
that matters.
and everything gets to a huge peak until the kids or one of the kids kind of breaks through the balcony of this like tower and
Mhm.
falls and gets hooked on the edge. So he's kind of hanging many, many feet above the ground and would
Yeah.
obviously die if he fell.
And
So everyone's freaking out. They're like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
look, let's put our differences aside and form a giant human pyramid and get that kid.
And the kids and the captain's like, will my dick help? And everyone's like, no, put that away. That's not time for this. It's time for teamwork. And so they all work together. They create a human pyramid. And the young Russian, realizing his American dream, becomes the hero as he climbs all the way up.
Yeah. He's like,
And he
I'm going to
almost
kiss
dies.
that woman again? I've got to climb all these people and risk my life.
Yeah. So he goes up. He snatches that kid, hear it, from the hook and then brings it all the way down. And everyone's like, fuck yeah, Russia's good. America's good. We're both good. High fives all around. They high five a bunch. The 2 people smooch. But then the militia guy who's a dick and sucks comes back and is like, I informed the military. Hooray. And everyone's like, fuck you, old man. Get out of here.
Yeah. They're like, well, they're going to come and bomb the shit out of this sub.
Yeah, so they're like, oh man, I guess that sub's gonna get destroyed unless and they come up with a plan.
This is when Eva Marie Saint comes up with the plan.
Right. And then she's like, we could just escort them. If we all go out with boats, will they really blow up all of us to blow up the submarine?
If this was Das Boot, the answer is yes.
Yeah, and also if this was real life, it probably would have been yes. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm like, what's wrong with all those people?
Yeah. They probably would have been like, those people are being held hostage. They are probably want to die
Yeah.
in the sake of America. And then they would have blown them all up.
Great.
Right. And so they start taking the submarine out, and we get some pretty nice scenes of the Air Force flying over a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah.
And they're basically like, we don't know what's going on, and we're heading back to base because look at all those people escorting that sub. And so
It reminded
They
me, like,
Yeah.
when they're in the jets there, what did they say? Like, what was their last thing they said? It reminded me of, like, the ending of Burn After Reading. They were just like, so what? Well, let's just go back to base. We'll figure it all out later.
yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
screw it.
probably hear what's going on later.
Like,
Yeah.
there's obviously a sub and, like, 150 people they said were escorting the sub. And, like, whatever.
And so then the octopus, which is the name of the submarine, goes off and is able to dive and get to safety.
And then, finally, the drunk guy from the bar gets his horse and he's ridden to the other side of
This
town.
is great.
And the horse rears up and he screams. What's he scream, guys?
The Russians are coming.
The Russians
are coming.
Crucify
And
him.
credits. Crucify.
It's probably the best ending the movie could have possibly have had.
Oh, yeah. It was nuts.
it was
Yeah,
a nuts movie, nuts ending, nuts everything. Nuts, everything. Everything.
That's a lot of nuts.
Pretty wacky.
My wife said she never saw that film.
Which
Zach?
film?
Oh,
Kung Pao.
Did you divorce her on the spot?
Yeah, I've got the papers drawn up.
All right, good.
irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
We cannot reconcile them.
Oh, my word.
You made her watch
All
it, though, right, Kyle?
This was just the other day I found out.
How you guys been married this long?
I don't know.
I think that's
How have I not made her watch it?
My wife has 100% not watched Kung Pao. I can
Such a good
guarantee you
movie.
that she will not be watching that.
All right, let's get into some ratings here, boys. Who wants to go first?
I do not.
Make Alex go.
I'll give it a 9.5. I thought it was really
Wow.
funny.
That's pretty
Obviously,
good.
I like these old movies. I think you guys all know that. And this kind of comedy's right up my alley. I was laughing the entire time. It's just some of the small, subtle things in there that also made me laugh. Like when Carl Reiner's character was trying to get Alan Arkin's character, and they asked for his name. And he goes, was it Whitman? Walt? And he's like, all right. Because he was trying to go for like Walt Whitman, but he's trying to say it weird. And then later on, the girl tries to say her name and she says it the correct way. And I don't know. It's just all funny. Stuff like that. Little stuff like that. I think you guys alluded to before where he tried taking the toast out with the fork.
Oh,
It was
man.
just-
It's so
There
funny.
was just like little subtle stuff thrown out throughout the whole movie that just really made me laugh. So I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
I also, like, my dad watched this a lot when I was growing up. So this is not my first time seeing it. I've seen it a lot. And I really like it. And I don't mind watching it again. And I recommend everyone to watch it. So, yep, I like it.
Listen to that.
It's a glowing review.
I can go next. Because I will say, I think this was another one that my dad had mentioned as being on his list of favorite ones. But I had never seen it before. I'm going to give it a 7.5. I actually was a little surprised. I after watching it, I was like, there's really interesting things going on story-wise in this, especially with him being like a comedy writer and like lamenting not being able to make like a second act to his play, and all these things happening and him continuing to say it as if he's not realizing that comedy is happening all around him. He's kind of just like this guy who's like, I can't think of what can I possibly write about? And then there's like all this shit that's like super crazy happening everywhere that he goes. And so there's stuff like that. And then the American Dream stuff with the young Russian that I just thought was really interesting and really fun to watch. And I thought the filmmaking was really good in that regard. It's just a different era. So it's hard. It's not as, I don't know. It's not necessarily something that I would have thought, hey, this was nominated for Best Picture, or hey, this is a super duper tip top of the field of filmmaking or whatever. It's just not something that struck me as that when I watched it. It was only after that I realized, oh wait, this was nominated for Best Picture. Oh wait, this is really well regarded. But my inkling was that wasn't the case. So I couldn't retrospectively go back and be like, oh, actually it's a 10. Oh, it's a 10 because it was everyone. I was like, no, in my mind, I had to set about a 7.5. I liked it. It didn't necessarily strike me as like super duper great. I thought it was funny. I thought it was really interesting filmmaking stuff, but I was about at 7.5. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in and do this. This is Zach.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
This is Zach, and this is my review.
this is Zach, and this is my review for the film.
movie that we watched.
This was a movie.
The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. I like the movie. Okay, so I know in the past I've always been like, yeah, these old movies, limp it. But this movie's great.
Yeah, you were like, limp it sucks, right? Old movie.
This movie was hysterical. This movie cracked me up. It was long, with 2 hours and 5 minutes, but it was good. I started watching at the gym. I came home, had a glass of wine, made some chips and salsa, watched the rest of it. It was good stuff. Loved it. Loved everything about it. The subtle jokes, like I'll say one that was not mentioned in the recap at the end when like the captain and the other main Russian guy are standing there and he like does the slow fist bump to his chest. And then the other guy does like an awkward, slow fist bump to his shoulder. It's just stupid, but it was funny. I loved it. Just like little stuff like that. Awkward glances, the little baby like smiling at the captain, and the captain gets all giddy like he's a weird pedophile. It was hilarious. So
It's great.
So that's what they were going for.
I mean, that's what I thought they were going for, but no, it was a great movie. I'm going to give it a 9.
Wow.
I can't believe I'm going to come out.
Coming out of left field.
I love old movies. I can't believe I'm going to come out like the lowest of this movie.
It says a lot about you, doesn't it? But I liked it. It was funny, kept my attention, goofy, and there it is, guys.
All right.
There it is.
There you go.
Great. Oh my word.
No one wants to hear us laugh. Okay, who's next?
All right.
Okay. I'll go. I'll leave our El Capitan to bring up the behind. This film, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. No. Channeling my inner Zac. This reminded me a bit, kind of Operation Petticoat. Just the feel. Alan Arkin kind of draw the similarities with, maybe Tony Curtis and terms of comedic chops. But you can definitely see the evolution of comedy a little bit here. And you really can feel it starting to move towards, stuff that you were starting to see in like the Monty Python movies and even like National Lampoon's movies. Obviously, this wasn't nearly as raunchy as those, but you can definitely see it, and you can feel the comedy a little more contemporary. It's definitely wacky as they get into the hijinks on this little New England island, and it was much more enjoyable for me, I felt, than Operation Petticoat. I know Jamie really liked that one, but I'm going to give this one a nod over that. It felt more contemporary and kept my attention, and you guys have already covered a lot of the funny scenes. Definitely resonated with me as well. I'm going to give this a 7.
Wow.
All righty.
So when you say it's less raunchy, you mean besides the full 69?
The full 69 scene definitely pushes it towards National Lampoons, but
right.
I feel like that was just an outlier, and the rest of the film wasn't as raunchy.
I do
Some would
like,
call it a tasteful scene.
I was
It
gonna
was
say, it's
tasteful.
necessary to the narrative because it's kind of telling what America has to offer.
And they're just so attractive. I think when they're that attractive, it becomes art.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're just studying law.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. This film that is a movie, that is a motion picture.
That's true.
The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. I love this type of humor.
And they
Love
came.
it. Great. The subtleness, like we've mentioned before, I love that type of stuff. I especially love the drunk guy who's trying to get the horse, those little cutover scenes. We literally see a guy chasing a horse in a field,
It's true.
and he just face plants, and then it cuts back over to what's actually going on. You can also see how this could happen. I mean, people in a frightened or like a heightened state of tension, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this is it. And people take up arms. People are panicking, and they want to be on the right side of history. So we're going to stop these Russians. It's crazy, but it's great. It's 8.25 for me.
Wow.
Nice. 8.69. That's what you said, right?
I wish I did, but I didn't.
6.9.69.
Perfect. Double point there.
Wow. We take 2 weeks off, and we really devolve, don't we?
We did.
Very primal.
All right, so let's get into some trivia. So, according to Norman Jewison, that's the director.
Wow, can you say that?
I can.
Oh.
I'm allowed to. A release at the height of the Cold War had considerable impact in both Washington and Moscow. It was one of the few American films at the time to portray the Russians in a positive light. Senator Ernest Gruning mentioned the film in a speech in Congress, and a copy of it was screened in the Kremlin. According to Jewison, when screened at the Soviet Film Writers Union, Sergei Bondarchuk, whoever that is, was moved to tears.
Seriously?
Yep. It was
From
not, as we
laughing?
said, from laughing, exactly.
Okay.
I'd hope so.
He's like, we wouldn't let all those people live. Are you kidding me?
Well, I'm trying to think if I actually mentioned this as an actual trivia or not, but the ending where all the Russians and Americans all work together to save a kid was actually something that was ended up using later in a different film called The Iron Giant, where the Iron Giant does exactly the same things. Two kids go up to a balcony to watch what's happening with the Iron Giant. One of them crashes through the railing, ends up hanging from a thing. Iron Giant comes and saves him, and that's how he kind of endears himself to the community at that point. So they used
Vin.
It was basically a reference to this film, and similar to the kind of reception that scene had in America and Russia.
How many times we brought up that movie during this podcast?
It's a lot because there's a submarine in it.
I was going to say, I have not even thought like twice about that movie since I've first seen it years ago.
So it was nominated, this film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards: Best Editing, Best Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Picture, as you mentioned. It did not win any of them. It lost all the major ones to A Man for All Seasons. A Man for All Seasons. About Thomas More.
Sounds
Never heard of it.
lame.
It's super lame. Although it was set in the fictional Gloucester Island off the coast of Massachusetts, the movie was filmed on the coast of Northern California, mainly in Mendocino. The harbor scenes were filmed in Noya Harbor in Fort Bragg, California, about 7 miles north of Mendocino. Basically, the filming was filmed on the West Coast, so when they had the dawn scene, when it was dawn on the East Coast, they're supposed to be, they just filmed that at dusk and then put a filter over it.
Say it isn't so.
It's true. The submarine was a fabrication. The U.S. Navy refused to loan one for the film, so they built a submarine and ended up making something. So it actually broke at one point during filming. So you can see a part where 2 pieces of it, where they mended it, kind of moved independently of each other at the final scene. Also, it was loaned out to be used in 1965's Morituri, a film called Morituri. So that's another one we could put on our list, because apparently this submarine, this mock submarine, isn't that one. I don't know. All the Russian characters were played by American actors. However, Arkin was raised in a Russian Jewish household and could speak the language fluently. So he actually was speaking Russian, and apparently his accent was good, but it just sounded like he was doing improvisation, like a comedy thing. Bickle, who we've seen before, he was actually...
Wait, Stickle?
Stickle.
Great throwback.
So Bickle was the XO in Enemy Below, if you didn't recognize him. The captain in this one was the second in command there, the guy who almost died, or did die in the end, but was rescued or whatever. And he was from Austria, so he was also proficient, and other actors did surprisingly well. Interestingly, Brian Keith, who played the sheriff, who in the end was getting translated, he actually spoke fluent Russian, but didn't in this film. He's done it in other films.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm. So this is another one, this little thing for Brom. Remember when you did a countdown where you talked about a talking cast?
Yeah.
Or it was about a talking cat, but it was every minute from this terrible movie called A Talking Cat.
Yes.
So the star of that is Johnny Whitaker.
That was my first countdown, I think. My first formal one that was on the podcast.
It could have been. So he was a famous child star from that time. So he was a kid who fell through the balcony, was hanging, right? He was the main character of A Talking Cat.
Wow.
So that kid. Yeah, he grew up to become a Talking Cat main character.
Wow.
He didn't
Dreams do come true.
He did not voice the cat.
Wasn't that Kevin Spacey?
No, that was Eric Roberts, the brother of Julia Roberts. That's real.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so anyways, Johnny Whitaker, the kid, at the time, not anymore, obviously, so impressed Brian Keith, the sheriff, that when TV's Family Affair in 1966, that's what made Johnny Whitaker famous. When that came up to be cast and Brian Keith was going to be the main character, he said, this kid that I just worked on and The Russians Are Coming, Russian Coming is great, let's bring him in. And he ended up, that's how he became famous, was one of the characters on
Seriously?
Family Affair. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yep. Okay, finally, the director Norman Jewison was nominated 5 times for Best Director and twice for Best Picture as producer of different films. So, casting What If, which actors from his other Best Director nominated projects would have done well here? So, he directed In the Heat of the Night, 1968, Sidney Poitier. We just saw him.
Ooh, yes, he was just in the Bedford incident.
He was.
I could see him being Walt.
Yeah, he would have been good as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think also the sheriff would have been good.
Do you think so?
I think so.
I don't know.
Because he was kind of like in charge. It's pretty good.
Kind of, but the sheriff kind of had that, like,
What about the young
I
Russian?
don't care.
The
Young
hot Russian.
Hot Russian.
Oh, Law.
Yeah.
The only guy who can be Law is probably Dolph Lundgren.
Probably. What about Paul Michael Glaser? So he's from Fiddler on the Roof, 1972. That was another one. He was nominated for Best Director. Paul Michael Glaser played Starsky in Starsky and Hutch. That's how you would know him. I knew you wouldn't know the name, or no one would really.
Oh, you mean Ben Stiller?
Yeah, so he's basically a Ben Stiller, but
Be
before.
careful.
Oh, okay.
We don't want to step on any more Zac Facts.
Right.
I literally can't even picture him.
He's one of the anonymous Russians, then?
Yeah,
Or maybe the bumbling sheriff?
that'd be fine.
Or deputy, the deputy, I should say. What about Denzel Washington, A Soldier Story, 1984? You ever seen that film, A Soldier Story?
I have not.
It's good. You should watch it.
Now, Denzel is like awesome. I don't know. I mean, he has such a commanding presence. I don't know who I would want.
I think it'd be
in
funny to
this.
make him the Russian captain.
That would be good.
That would be pretty funny.
I mean, I think the sheriff, I think Russian captain, I think the drunk chasing a horse.
It's just Denzel Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a waste of talent.
So he also directed Moonstruck in 1987. So there's two actors in there that are pretty famous.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what Moonstruck? Who's in Moonstruck?
That's a little bit of Cher and Nick Cage, if I'm correct.
That's right. Cher and Nick Cage. So who does Cher play and who does Nick Cage play?
Well, obviously, I want Cher to be Eva Marie Saint,
Yes.
and then Walt is going to be Nick Cage.
Yes, exactly. They made two main people.
But
They actually would fit pretty well.
yeah, and Nick Cage could be pretty great as in the Alan Arkin role.
Yeah.
Yes, he would have been. Yeah. He really needs to choose some scenery. All right, and then finally, Ed Harris. He was in a movie called Inside Heat, directed in 2025, actually in the future.
Wow.
So he'll get nominated for Best Director in 2025 for Inside Heat. He plays a firefighter / baseball player who saves the world from an asteroid being pulled towards Earth by the gravity shield we've created to battle global warming. What do you think?
Wow. Sounds a little similar to Geostorm.
That's not similar to Geostorm. Not similar. No, not similar at all.
The veteran.
Ed Harris can rile up some people.
I think that's right, especially
Super
when he
gun crazed.
when he flexes his muscles and his shirt pops off. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, "I'm following him." I don't know about you, Sheriff Denzel Washington. That guy over there,
I thought Denzel was the drunk guy.
or the guy who's working on the airplane.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be great too.
Like turn this into an actual like serious like thriller.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a great remake to think about how you'd make this into serious thriller. I guess that's kind of just like Red Dawn, right?
Ed Harris would totally be a great like haggard veteran.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
like
mean, you
people
could-
rally around him. You can cut the tension with a knife.
Oh yeah, you could. With the way this comedy is done, you wouldn't need to do a whole lot to turn it into a serious movie.
No, yeah, you wouldn't.
You just take out some of the goofy scenes, and you're like, "All right, I guess we're in it."
I do feel like that was like a trait of comedies of older films where the storylines themselves weren't so ridiculous. It's not like
Yeah.
Anchorman where you're like, it's a bunch of super world famous anchormen. It's like, no, it's not that. It's actually like a serious, real plot that you
Yeah.
have to kind of deal with. Yeah. All right. So Phantom Zone, we can do this real quick. We don't have to go too into depth because we've actually used this before.
Engage the Phantom.
Phantoms engaged, sir.
As I said, Theodore Bickel was in both In Enemy Hands and this one. Or, sorry, Enemy Below, not Enemy Hands. Jesus Christ, that'd be
Wow.
crazy. He'd be like an old man. I think he was dead by then.
Jeez.
No, Enemy Below, and then this one. So we've used it before. I actually used John Philip Law, the sexiest. He may actually replace Ed Harris. Blasphemy, sorry. And we used him because he went to Attack, if you remember, Attack Force Z, starring Mel Gibson and Sam Neill. And then Sam Neill was in Hunt for Red October, and we've used that a whole bunch of times to go forwards.
Fabulous.
Yeah. There we go.
It's unreal how easy it is to link any submarine movie back to Ed Harris and Phantom.
It's super easy.
Okay. I don't say that. I would say, all right, it's time. I can't say okay. It's world wide. We're in the second week of Cold War Movie Month. And I wanted to do a Russian submarine because a Russian submarine crashed into the shores of that island that I can't remember the name of. And
Gloucester.
What is it called?
Gloucester.
Gloucester. So I went with the Russian Oscar Class Submarine. It was built from 1975.
Oh, that's a good one. Did you pick that because it was nominated for Oscars?
I also did think about that as well. So this was built from 1975 to 1996, and it's actually still in service. And they were put into service in 1981. So they're relatively older, but the reason that they're still in service is because of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the financial struggles. So they just decided, while they were recycling or scrapping some of the old ones, they decided to keep these. And they're actually they're pretty good. There were 20 of them planned. 13 were completed. 6 are active. 2 are currently undergoing modernization. 1 was lost, and that's a pretty famous one. And 4 have been retired.
Is that cursed?
Yes.
Wow.
Cursed. Yes, it's an Oscar class. So when this went into service, it was the largest cruise missile sub until the United States Ohio class was converted to carry cruise missiles. So it's still currently the 4th largest submarine or cruise missile sub, behind the Ohio, the Russian Borai, I'm sure that's not how you say it, and then the infamous Typhoon.
Mm-hmm.
So specs on this thing: it is 508 feet, 6 inches long.
Wow. Gotta get that extra 6 inches.
Oh, yeah, you have to.
That's what she said.
It has 2 nuclear reactors, water-cooled reactors, 2 steam turbines that are able to generate 97,999 horsepower. It's quite a bit. While it's on the surface, it can cruise along at 15 knots.
Good.
Submerged 32.
Really solid.
Yeah, this is what surprised me. It only has an endurance of 120 days.
You want to be out and about for longer than that.
Well, I'm not saying I would personally, but, in case there were ever a situation that arose.
If they said you have an opportunity to be on a 120-day cruise, what's the answer?
Duh.
Okay.
Yeah. You will not see the sun. You will not come back all tan, and you certainly won't get the free drinks like most people do.
Other than the tanning booth we got.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Great. It seems like a waste, but all right. No, we just put you in the nuclear reactor. You crisp up real quick. So test depth, this thing can go down to 1,706 feet.
Don't try for 1707.
No, that would be just downright dangerous. So for the weapons, it says 4 21-inch torpedo tubes in the bow. Don't worry, it wasn't enough. They also wanted to add 2 26-inch torpedo tubes.
Perfect.
Yeah, for me, I'm sure there's a reason for the 26 inchers, but I'd probably try to keep them all the same, so I'm not carrying all different types of torpedoes.
Probably not, yeah.
But what do I know? So it can carry 28 21-inch and 26-inch weapons, including the SSN-15 Starfish, which is an anti-submarine missile.
Terrible name.
The nuclear warhead. Or it can hold 40 anti-submarine torpedoes or 32 ground mines. It can also hold 24 P-700 Granite SSN-19 shipwreck cruise missiles.
Better name.
I like that one. The cruise missiles are actually carried in slanted launch tubes on the front. Just kind of gives it like a little bulkier look to it, and they can be fired while it's submerged. Targeting can be done either with a surface ship or satellites.
Ooh.
So, these were originally designed to attack NATO, U.S. carrier battle groups during the Cold War. And, like I mentioned, the Kursk was one of these. And while many of them were scrapped, I thought this was interesting because I hadn't seen it before. The K-173 caught fire while it was being scrapped. I don't know what led to that.
Oh, that's it.
That's all I could find.
Oh.
So that's that, man.
Alrighty.
Subs worldwide. All right. Alex, you got some sweet news for us?
Not really. Not a lot going on in the sub world. You guys think I was actually looking up news? Well, I wish there was more. Same old stuff, really. Future submarines arrive late, cost more. Still some secret.
Do you think that's a pretty classic storyline?
Some Chinese submarine, still very secret. Supposed to be starting construction here in 2020. Everyone knows about it. Nothing new there. A tornado did strike a submarine base a day ago.
Wait, where was the sub base at?
Kings Bay, Naval Submarine Base, Kings Bay. I don't even know where that's at. I guess I should
In
have
the
done.
U.S.?
Maybe. I don't know. Do you know where that's at?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
It's a little roller coaster park north of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, that do it.
Yeah.
Do
Great.
it.
I'm sure they have a lot of subs there.
That's right next to the island, isn't it? Yeah.
Welcome to the island.
Although, it said only 5 people were injured and tossed 3 vehicles into the water. So, they did their job. They made sure they stay away. A couple pictures of debris. Nothing crazy.
What were the
I'm sorry.
vehicles?
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Probably a lawnmower.
A riding lawnmower? Yeah.
Hey, you can get OVI on that.
Yeah, you sure can. I don't think you get an OVI in a sub, though. Never
There's a
know.
cop trying to pull a sub over.
Coast Guard.
What about if the sub's on a trailer going down the interstate and you're drunk in it?
The biggest thing that
You're good.
happened was a crane on a barge broke loose and fell.
Crane. It's combining
yeah.
a couple of your favorite things.
It is. Luckily, Coast Guard was able to save that. So nothing else.
Did they need another crane to lift that crane up?
Probably.
So,
Probably 2 cranes, to be honest.
Crane
with you.
on crane action.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a YouTube video someplace. We'll get to the bottom of it.
Crane on crane.
I did want to mention also, one of the former presidents of the United States passed away this week, George H.W. Bush, and one of his most famous things in war. So he was fought in World War II, and one of his most famous things that happened to him was that he was shot down in his plane. He landed in the water. Guess what he was rescued by?
Submarine.
He was the USS Finback, a submarine. And so you can see videos of him getting pulled out of the ocean by a submarine. See, there's a little picture of it right there. Kyle?
Oh, that's cool.
There you
And he said
go.
he quipped at the time, I saw this thing coming out of the water, and I said to myself, geez, I hope that's one of ours. Ew.
Yeah.
If anyone ever said it, like George H.W. Bush comedy.
Yeah.
That's what they associate with it.
Let me go grab my GoPro and videotape it.
So yeah, he got one of his highest honors as part of that whole thing. The DFC.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be your only thought, though, right? Like,
Yeah, it
oh
would've been
my
shit,
gosh, that better be one of ours.
Pretty cool.
All right, man. So is that it for the news, Alex?
I've got nothing else. So
Dude, I would love you on a news channel, just doing it like that. You're
really
like,
not much.
you guys already know what's going on. Like,
Shit.
got them out in like a windstorm.
there is very little happening in the world of submarines.
Last year it was going off, man.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was like it was destiny.
All right. Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hark.
We got Ben?
What do I hear?
Hark the herald angels sing.
Don't date this.
What?
Don't date this.
You already
Podcast.
did.
Sorry.
You already did.
Why?
I mean,
H.W.
people
Bush
play freaking
dying.
Christmas
It is
music year round
the
anymore.
third night of Hanukkah. So there you
This
go.
isn't getting released until March. Okay.
Okay. My bad. I have a countdown for us, gentlemen. Tube 3 ready to fire, sir.
Commence the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Give it to me.
So, as we know, this film followed the exploits of some wacky Russians that ran their U-boat or their submarine aground on Gloucester Island, just to get a closer look at America. And there's so many better places they could have got a nicer taste of what America is all about. Instead, they go to Gloucester, which even our main character said it was chilling him to the bone in the middle of summer. So sounds like a real dumpster island.
So by the way, just to mention, there is a place in Massachusetts called Gloucester, and it was actually famous in the news not that long ago. So do you remember
got all the Worcesters and all the
Gloucesters,
Worcester Street, Bowling Green, Ohio.
But if you remember, there was a
Everything ties to
scandal.
BG.
There was a scandal at one point in a high school in Gloucester where there was a pregnancy pact. They actually made like a Lifetime movie, I think, about it. Called
Wait, a pregnancy pack?
Yeah, where a bunch of high school students decided
Packed. Okay.
all together that they were going to get pregnant, and they made like a movie about it, and that was in Gloucester.
Is this the one where somebody paid a homeless guy?
When was wait? When was that, Jamie? What year was that?
That would have been, I don't know, it would have been like in 2011
Well, how old's your kid now?
or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
I'd say, Alex, didn't you take a trip out there that summer?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Brom.
No, it's quite all right. So my countdown this week is for any Russian submariners out there that want to get a glimpse of America in the modern day. These are the top 5 islands in America for you to run your submarine aground. And these were voted Reader's Choice Awards on Condé Nast Traveler.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, no.
Great.
Martha's Vineyard isn't making that list, I don't think.
Let's see. Martha's Vineyard might have made the top 10. No. Nantucket was number 7.
Get out of here. Fuck Nantucket. That place is horrible. Get out of here. It's for garbage people.
It was probably voted by a lot of Nantucketers.
Probably.
It is Reader's Choice. So Reader's Choice top 5. We're going to lead off with Oahu, Hawaii. This is the most visited Hawaiian island and home to Honolulu and Waikiki Beach. These each contain a pro tip from Condé Nast. So the pro tip for listeners and Russian submariners, if you want to visit Oahu, is to head to Red Hot Chinatown for the cuisine and world-class chefs that you will find there.
It's fitting because they chose the second best Hawaiian island. So it's the same thing with Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. They chose the second best one.
Well, maybe number 4, maybe they got the best one. Maui?
Maybe. Nope.
Oh.
So there we go. They fill it up with garbage Hawaiian islands. Fine.
All right. Well, you heard it from Jamie. Jamie says these are dumpster islands like Gloucester.
Shout out to Kauai.
Kauai. That was on one of the lists. I was doing some research.
So
Kauai
you should maybe pick that list.
Yeah,
Here, Martha's Vineyard probably also is featured.
Again, this is Reader's Choice, so they probably did some social media posts to get their own islanders to vote.
Democracy is dead.
Yeah, it is.
In the darkness.
But Maui, second largest island in Hawaii and home to famous volcanic beaches. Our pro tip here is to catch as much of Maui's natural beauty as possible. You got to drive the Road to Hana, a 68-mile scenic route featuring dramatic waterfalls and ending at the spectacular 7 sacred pools. So, take
I'd
note.
do that.
Yeah, fine. I will allow it. Kauai's better though.
Number 3, Kiowa. Not Kauai. Kiowa Island. This is in South Carolina, though, so we're going back over to the Atlantic coast for this one. This is a luxurious barrier island that is great for golf, tennis, and respite next to the pool. Pro tip here, Kiowa beaches are almost exclusively private, save for the critically acclaimed Kiowa Beachwalker Park, which is home to sand as soft as talcum powder, but less cancerous.
So is that
Is that what it says in the account?
No, I might have added a little bit of...
yeah.
I won't say what I added.
So wait, was that you said South Carolina?
This is South Carolina. I'm probably butchering it. It's Kiowa?
I'm wondering if that was featured in the reality TV show Southern Charm, which is quite good.
All right.
We all watch it, so we probably know it.
So
You
if
can
you guys
speak for
need to
yourself on that
know
one.
which Hawaiian island to go to and which reality TV shows
I'm
to
way
watch.
up on reality TV. I only watch reality TV, actually. I don't watch any narrative TV.
Very, very good.
We have nothing to say.
Number 2 is Amelia Island in Florida. This cultural melting pot has French, Spanish, and Mexican roots, and great food as a result. Somebody farted on that one.
Well, it's Florida.
Oh. Pro tip here, venture this way in October, a little out of season, but you get to experience the Amelia Island Jazz Festival.
Oh, nice.
That'd be pretty cool.
You said that wrong. Also, it's yes.
Yes, sorry.
Stop, Jay.
Number one, this is. I mean, it's not like it's Myrtle Beach or anything like that, but this is pretty mainstream. Hilton Head Island, South Carolina.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one in Southern Charm, Hilton Head.
This
A
getaway
bunch
is
of the characters are
described.
from there.
It's described as otherworldly, featuring 12 miles of pristine beaches and top-notch cuisine. I mean, come on now. Let's bring it a little
mostly
bit
just-
back to earth here. But
Yeah, they mostly
I'll-
just got drunk on the island. That's what I remember from the show.
There was no real good pro tip here, so I'll give you one from myself. We used to go here a lot when I was a kid, and I had a lot of fun feeding the alligators at the shipyard, which was a resort there. So
That's awesome.
That's pretty fun.
Oh, good. That's probably always number one.
I did vote a few hundred times. I spammed that refresh for Hilton Head. But
You were like,
there it
Nantucket,
is.
Nantucket,
There it
Nantucket.
is.
Man,
Wait,
I was hoping and praying for Put-in Bay.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
There it is.
Great.
Yep, no Put-in Bay. Sorry about that.
Nantucket sucks, man. It sucks balls. It sucks.
He is an island elitist over here. He is quite upset with this list.
Wow.
I mean, if anyone, he is the only islander on the podcast.
Aren't we
So-
all really on an island, bro?
Yes.
Whoa,
Island
man.
called
It's
life.
pretty deep. Take crazy,
another
bro.
toke, bro.
Bro. Bro.
Alrighty. I
I'll
think
have
we
what
got
he's
that.
having.
Are we at the moment that we've all been waiting for?
This is the moment that we've all been waiting for. Smash cut. See you next week.
There it is.
There it is. All right.
Well, before we get started with this last segment of our podcast, what starts with W and ends in hat?
Zac Facts, it's Zac Facts. When you're going down, get some Zac Facts. When you're going down.
All right, are we doing it? Are we good? Zac Facts?
Yeah.
All right, Zac Facts. Not that great this week because the movie was so
Oh.
funny in itself. So if you want to laugh, don't listen to this. Just stop listening to the podcast now and watch the movie.
Whoa, hold on. They got to stick around for the interview with Eric.
That's true. Do
Oh,
not
that's
turn it
right.
off.
That's right.
You're right. Listen to the interview and then watch the movie and then come back to Zac Facts for mild disappointment.
I also
And then
don't,
forget the rest.
I don't understand because Zac Facts are true facts, and so there's nothing funny about them.
Exactly.
It's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
Very good.
Exact. And exaction.
Executor. Right.
All
There it
right,
is.
Zac Facts. Fact number one for the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. So we talked about awards earlier tonight, and we missed one. You guys missed one. That's all it is. You missed one. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. They won an Oscar for the most realistic opening credits ever. But that
I
was the
liked
only that was the only year they gave an Oscar for that category. So
Huh.
because it was so awesome with the American flag and
I was going to actually say that those were some super lame opening credits and weren't nearly
What?
as cool as Fantastic Voyage.
loved it. It's my ringtone. Number two, for realism, they did not tell the actors playing the Whitakers anything, and they set up cameras to capture their real reactions.
Wow.
I believe it. Confronting who you think is a Russian
I liked it
insurgent.
when he
It's supposed
tackled
to be
him.
it's supposed to be a drama, but then they're like they're acting fucking nuts.
I mean, he wasn't supposed to get that gun. He just happened
Yeah,
to get
exactly. They're like, oh shit,
it. Could have murdered him on the screen.
shouldn't have loaded it.
It's like a real Truman Show style movie.
Yeah, that was another fact. They set up 1,000 tiny cameras in that house.
Wow.
But tiny cameras back there were like 2 foot long. So
What are all these weird sticks?
It's like the book 1984, where they look like at one point in the book 1984, they look around on the trees, the characters, and they're like, there can't be any cameras or microphones here. They'd be too big. You wouldn't be able to hide them. It's like, okay.
wait, what book?
1984. by
Never
George
heard of
Orwell.
it.
Never heard of it? Oh. Well, that's
George
the next
R.R.
episode of the
Martin.
podcast. So, yeah, exactly. George R.R. Martin's 1984.
All right, here's another one. For realism, again, every Russian actor which we know is American, was required to drink a fifth of vodka prior to filming each day to get in the character.
Wouldn't they just be drinking like engine oil or something? Because vodka was kind of scarce.
I mean, off
Vodka?
camera. Off camera.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't really realistic.
You're right. That's a Zac Fact done gone wrong.
Zac Fact.
All right. And as always, with some of our favorite films that we watch, there's always a porn parody. And of course, there's one for this. So the porn parody for The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming is The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming.
I thought you were going to twist it around. I was waiting for you to not
Just
say
going
that.
some completely different tangent.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Everything.
Oh my word.
And I want to apologize to Eric Moreno, who probably will have 0 people listening to his interview now, as we've scared them all off.
Put that first, Kyle.
At Mac East Second Floor Studios, sometimes we don't have all the answers. In dire times like this, we've decided to call in the very best. Welcome to an interview with an expert. So tonight we have one of our guests who's been on multiple times, good friend, Submariner vet, Mr. Eric Marino. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I feel like I'm a veteran of the show now. I've been on here a few times now.
Yeah, man, you might have even been on here more than some of our regular hosts have now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's cool. Maybe I just throw me in as a host then, I guess.
Sounds good. Anything new going on in the sub world?
Oh, yeah, man. We always got stuff going on. But, yeah, I just ended up doing an interview with A&E out in New York on the Growler last weekend. That was pretty fun.
No shit, dude.
Talking about like museum boats and talking about that. They found the AMA that we did back in September, but he actually listened to me on your podcast and then called me and said, "Hey, look." Yeah, he's like, "Hey, look, I really enjoyed that podcast you did with your buddies. You know, let's do an interview." So it's basically kind of the same thing we did with you, or I did with you.
That's awesome. So you said that's on A&E. So like, is it going to be on television?
I don't know. So the way I was told is it's like a digital series that they're doing.
Okay.
So if you go to YouTube and then look up the biography A&E YouTube page,
yeah,
they've done interviews with like astronauts and some inventors and stuff, and you can go on there and look, and you can see what the format is, and it's basically a Reddit AMA. Like they're working with Reddit to kind of revamp their digital side of their content, I guess. And so they wanted to. They were just picking through AMAs and found the submarines one that we did with you guys.
No way, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I ended up doing that. So that should be coming out in probably the first or second week of December.
Holy shit, dude. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be great. So you got to go on a boat out there?
Yeah, so they have a museum out there called the Intrepid Museum. So they have the Intrepid, which is a conventional carrier that we had. And then on the other side of the pier, they have the USS Growler, which is the Navy's first guided missile submarine. So it shot 4 Regulus 1 missiles, which were the first real nuclear cruise missiles, which is what everybody's talking about nowadays with the whole low yield nukes and stuff, that they want to put them back on cruise missiles. And this was like the first boat to do that. And so we went down there and they got the missiles sitting out on the back, because it actually, the submarine actually had 2 hangars on the top of it. And they were, these missiles were essentially aircraft with gyros instead of people flying them. And so they push them out on these decks on the top of the boat. They'd surface the boat. They'd push them out on these like rails, they'd pull the wings out and they would lift it up and launch it. And so that was the first, like essentially the first nuclear cruise missile submarine that we had. But we were building the Polaris at the same time, and the Polaris was launched by the ballistic missile submarines.
Mm-hmm.
And you could actually launch those underwater. You didn't have to surface the boat. So they were like, yeah, we're going to go with this one. So they only built that one in the Greyback, and they stopped. So.
Dang. Yeah, I was just, in our newest episode, I was reading up on the Polaris A3. Man, that sounds like such a crazy great missile, man. I was impressed at the speed it flies. I didn't know that thing could travel along 8,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, anything that goes out into space, they travel back in real quickly. If you see the cruise missiles, those are the ones that fly pretty slow. Like you can put, like, so we have Tomahawks, right? You can put a nuclear warhead on the end of the Tomahawk, but the Tomahawk's subsonic. I mean, it flies slow enough to where you can fly an airplane next to it and just shoot it down with machine guns, or a missile or something. So the actual ICBMs and the submarine launched ballistic missiles, they actually go into space, and they go so fast because there's no wind resistance up there. They can get up to speed real quick, and they'll actually come back in. But like if you see video of so last year when North Korea was really ramping up their nuclear program, and they launched that ballistic missile that landed really close to Japan, like the north side of Japan.
Yeah.
You see video of it coming back in. Well, that's actually a bad thing. That actually told everybody that they weren't getting the reentry right, because when it comes in that fast, you can actually melt it, and you can actually destroy the warhead.
Oh, geez.
So that actually coming back in the right speeds and the right angles, and coming in and having the right materials on the outside so it doesn't melt and stuff. Yeah, it's a huge deal. And so that specific missile itself and that type of reentry is a really delicate thing to do.
I bet, man. Well, I mean, like you said, something I never even thought about, a missile melting when it's re-entering the atmosphere, but that could be a huge problem.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're going 8,000 miles per hour, you got to worry about stuff just melting off.
Well, I don't know if I'll ever be traveling that fast, but maybe one day. So a while ago, you posted, because there was a movie that came out. We did an episode on earlier, Hunter Killer. It's new in theaters, starring Gerard Butler and Gary Oldman. And you have a much different perspective on it than any of us on our show would, because you are a submariner. So what are the things, I can't remember how many points exactly you had. I think I mentioned might have been 10, but what was wrong with this movie?
Well, I mean, and so when I did that, I did kind of like an everything wrong with the movie, right? And I had a couple bullet points and stuff. And, and so I did that before the movie came out. And I've since, I've talked to a lot of people and changed my mind a few ways, this and that. And I've actually seen the movie now and stuff. So it's a little bit different. It really depends on your perspective, right? So are you out there looking for a fun movie? Yeah, it's fucking awesome if you're looking for that, especially for a submarine movie.
Oh, definitely.
Are you looking for an Academy Award winning series? No, you're not going to get that. And that's why I think you see such a vast difference in what the critics are giving it and what the people are giving it. You see these really low critic scores, these really high people, critic scores, and it's because people love seeing superhero movies and just kind of unrealistic drama stuff. They love it. But the critics don't like seeing that. And the people that are, that have been in the game, they're like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's fun. It's not exactly what we would want to see. But you know what? I was talking to David Ayer about it, and he said, if you did a movie that was on point to submarines, it's probably gonna be pretty fucking boring. So you gotta spice it up a little bit. It is what it is. You're trying to sell movies. This is a business. It's not. You can make a documentary if you want, sell it to Netflix. It is what it is. And I'm just kind of paraphrasing now, but you're trying to make a movie, and Fast and the Furious type movies, they're real exciting and a whole lot of fun. They sell a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you throw, you throw Gerard Butler in there and you got him, kicking people around the torpedo room and stuff or whatever,
Oh, yeah. I mean, because most of the time you're just out cruising around, submerged. You can't see anything. There's not really anything going on. You're just kind of on alert, right?
Yeah, I've actually thought about it a lot. Like, how could you make an awesome submarine movie? Like, what would it be? And my favorite movie is Down Periscope, right? I really like that type of movie. Mm-hmm. But there's more talking, there's a lot less action, you get more of the personality. And I think that's why a lot of submariners like myself like it more than, say, The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah.
Even though, it's probably split both ways. And then if you go to Europe, everybody likes Das Boot. They don't like anything else, But I don't know. Just to get back to the original point, it's a great movie if you're looking for action and fun. But I would love to see a movie that could, it'd have to be something like Quentin Tarantino, like somebody who's really good at dialogue, where there's not a whole lot of action going on, just a little bit every once in a while to keep everybody interested, but it's mainly like dialogue and just really dark humor. That type of like director or series would be probably the only type of person who could pull it off, at least from what I can think of. So,
well, did you know on the movie Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, they actually brought in Tarantino to write some of the dialogue for that movie?
Oh yeah, I mean, you would have to. If you want to like sit around and listen to people talk, you're gonna need somebody who can do that type of dialogue really well. And to be honest, when you watch a Tarantino movie, right, they generally they'll have just kind of batter back and forth about a movie that they saw or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, this guy was talking about this, did this. Well, that's exactly what we would talk about on Submarine. It's just like, oh man, I used to love this movie. This dude would talk about this and say that. And like, oh man, I love that movie. And then DVDs came out and you could take them underway and trade them. So you would actually have that type of dialogue in real life. So it's very similar to what we would go through. So it's a perfect match. I'm surprised they don't do it more, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he is a master of dialogue. It would be, I think, if you had an entire Tarantino submarine film. I mean, Tarantino has his own following anyway, so that movie would already get a lot of attention. But something like that would be a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, and it had to be dark, too, because at this point, I think what most submariners want to see is just realistic action. Yeah. Because it's just as good, man. I'm telling you, like, the movies are great. Like, I love the whole Fast and the Furious where they're skirting next to the canyon and they barely miss it by a foot, and then they go through this underwater canyon and all this stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, I get it. We never do anything like that. That's so unrealistic. It's ridiculous. Right. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would that be the only way into the port is through a damn underwater cavern? That's so stupid. That makes no sense. What about the surface boats? Why can't you just surface to get over there? I don't know. That little shit just kind of nitpicks at us, and we'd like to see the real shit, like just people bullshit back and forth in the machinery room, just fucking with each other and having a good time, and like that. I think that's what a lot of the actual submariners want to see is the stuff that's never been done.
Yeah, I mean a lot of personal connection with everybody on board, and I mean the day-to-day life that you guys go through.
Yeah, and I like I said, I like Hunter Killer, but that movie's an action movie, and it's not really designed to show, intricacies and the ins and outs of everything. It's there to just give you pure action and adventure, and you won't get that little stuff like that really connects you to what a crew is. I think that's one of the reasons you hear them go hoo-yah, in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like you never hear that. You never hear that on a submarine. I don't know if I've ever heard that in my entire life when I was on there. But it's a cheap, quick way to, show that the crew is together on this or whatever. Yep. Instead of just giving them awesome dialogue and showing that they have this passion to keep each other alive, essentially. Like they don't really have a choice to be cool with each other. They kind of have to be.
Yeah, they have no other option.
It's just a way to deliver,
Yep. One of the things that blew me away in this movie, you talking about, how unrealistic it was and stuff, how Gerard Butler was able to turn that sub on a dime, specifically that scene where the Russian submarine is shooting the torpedoes at them while they're hidden in the ice, and they're able to, I mean, barely skirt that downed submarine. Did you notice that scene at all? Because, I mean, to me, that really stood out. I thought, all right, how can you turn a boat like this that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty impossible. I mean, now don't get me wrong, submarines can turn pretty quickly. I mean, they really, really can. I mean, if you're going all ahead flank, which means you're going as fast as you can, and you take a right turn, I mean, you can really turn that thing fast. But if you look at like how it actually turns, it looks like it almost kind of stops in front of it and then just kind of veers to the right and does this weird 90-degree turn. And like I said, like it's that little stuff that gives it action and adventure, but it's not very realistic. And you would never see a submarine, especially a nuclear submarine, that close to the bottom. Like I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, if shit's going down, you got to do what you got to do. But putting a reactor that close to the bottom is not safe, because if you hit the bottom, you can suck in a bunch of like dirt and stuff into the cooling system. It's not good for it.
Oh yeah.
You can end up messing up the cooling system. So you don't get close to the bottom. Like, it's not something you do. So I don't know. I don't know. It's fun. It's not very realistic, though.
That's what we all kind of thought, too. We thought, well, this movie, when I sat there and watched it, I did thoroughly enjoy it. I had a really good time watching it. It's got a lot of things that we like to see. A good wrench scene. That's always something I'm looking for in a movie. Not everybody really is.
Yeah. I didn't actually expect that, but I was like, how are they going to do the whole sound thing? Because submarine movies always have that same routine that they follow, which is, they got to have submarine puns. They got to have something drop and almost hit the floor of the deck and almost get them killed. And then they got to actually have something hit the deck and get them killed. And, there's just this, I was wondering how they were going to do that. My favorite way that I always thought was have them drop a toilet seat, because people don't realize that, like, that's something that could really kill you is your damn toilet seat. We have metal bowls, that hold the water actually in the bowl, and the toilet seats are plastic. I mean, you can't really put anything that's not industrial in there, so you have this hard plastic seat, and it's just a toilet seat. So if it falls, it'll bing, dang, right into that tank, right out in the water, and you're dead because some dude dropped a toilet seat. So when we would go underway and we were in a spot where we had to stay quiet, we would zip tie the toilet seats up, so you couldn't have a toilet seat. So you'd have to sit on this cold metal bowl or hover over it or whatever you had to do. But I always thought that would be an interesting way. Like, you just see this dude taking a piss and bing, he drops the toilet seat and, oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's something I never would have even thought about. That is an excellent idea. They do need to put that in.
And they have to change little things like that I noticed. Because, like, I was a torpedo man, so I actually stood that watch during that scene a lot. We didn't have belts. Like, you don't carry tools around with you. Why would you do that? Because then you risk dropping tools all the time. Right. You don't have tools unless you're actually working on something. So the tool belt was something they had to add to that scene to make it kind of make sense, Yeah. There's little things like that they didn't really have to do. They could have done it better. I don't know, just in my opinion. But it still worked. I think it's a great scene. I think it's kind of funny. My actual big problem with that scene was when, I don't know if you guys are already giving out the spoilers or whatever, but is when they dropped that torpedo on that dude, because that's a big deal. Like, they fucked up in that scene.
Oh,
like, they deserve to have that torpedo dropped on them. You don't move a torpedo unless it's secure. And they tried to move that thing without it being secure, and it fell. Like, that's what happens. You don't do that. So it's that was one of the big problems I had with the scene. They showed this guy to be like a hero after he like had this torpedo drop on him, but he's a fucking asshole. Like, you should have secured the thing like you were supposed to, and it wouldn't have fell. If you see the scene, what they do is they pull the straps off. Well, you don't pull those straps off unless you have the hydraulic system latched into the back of it, because that thing's going to hold that thing from falling. So they didn't have the hydraulic system attached to it, and then it fell off the skids and it fell onto the floor, and boom, you got the tube trapped. Like, that's just what happens.
Gosh.
Especially if you're in a wartime scene where you're taking crazy angles and shit. You know, most submarines don't tilt left and right, so those torpedoes usually stay pretty still, other than up and down. But when you're going from 5 knots to max speed, the actual torque of the screw will cause the boat to spin to the right, kind of like a helicopter does. You know, you have to it'll kind of torque itself to the right. And so the boat will actually tilt a little bit. So even when you're going straight, you're still tilting back and forth and stuff. So you got to follow the procedures and secure your weapons, you know?
Wow. That's cool. That's something I never had any idea about with that. That's amazing. There is also something I was wondering, you would be the guy who would know this. During this scene, I just saw how many torpedoes they had stacked up, just tons and tons of them. And then I started thinking, how do they get the torpedoes into the sub? Do they load them where you shoot them out of?
So there's a funny thing about that scene. If you look at that scene, so that's a Virginia class sub, right? And so when you look at the torpedo room in one scene, it looks like you can see one side or the other of the torpedo room, because the torpedo room will have a port and starboard side where the walkways are, and that's where you see them kind of standing there around the torpedo room talking and bullshit and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you have where the panel is, so you see that big black dark panel with all the knobs and stuff on it, and that's where they will move and, you know, launch the weapons and stuff. And then you have the torpedoes behind them. Well, if you look at that rack, it looks like it's a warehouse. It is a huge room. It goes from like this really small room in one scene to this enormous room in the other. So look a little bit bigger and a little bit more stacked than it really is. But I mean, they hold a lot of weapons. But so when it comes to loading torpedoes, it really depends on the type of submarine you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you look at like the Kilo class, which is a Russian diesel electric, they'll actually load through the torpedo tubes. So they'll pump a bunch of water back aft and bring the front of the boat way up out of the water, so it's really crooked, and it'll expose the torpedo tubes. And they basically just open the doors and just load them straight in.
Okay.
And so you also have a few different Russian submarines that will actually have a door in the dead center. So they'll open this door up and they'll just load into this one spot, kind of like an actual magazine on the bottom of a handgun, and then load it into the torpedo room. So what our boat does, or did, the LA class, so the Flight 3 and all of the LA class, they load through the forward hatch. So if you look at a submarine, there's a hatch before the sail. Mm-hmm. That hatch, they'll actually angle the torpedoes and they'll go in that hatch at like a 45-degree angle. Oh. And so what they end up doing, so the torpedo room's on the very bottom deck. And so they essentially remove the entire center of the forward end of the boat. So you can't really go anywhere on the forward end without like having to like go up ladders and around and back through and doing this, because they actually cut basically a hole all the way down in at an angle. They flatten it, they bring it straight down into the torpedo room, and it lays flat in the racks, and then they move it back and forth to wherever they need to, and they just kind of bring them in one at a time, and then they offload them the same way.
Wow, that's got to take a really long time to get all those in.
Yeah, it's pretty taxing when it comes to doing that. That's one of the reasons why they went to these new VPMs, which is the new vertical launch systems, because you can get 7 Tomahawks into one tube at a time. You're not trying to load 7. As far as I understand it, I've never actually shot a VPM, so I may be wrong about that. But it's supposed to help load faster, because if you have to load the entire torpedo room and you have to load all the VLS tubes, it could take days. So,
I bet
that's taxing on the torpedo men, because now as soon as they got to go out, they're already burnt out from loading weapons. Now they got to go out and be on standby, ready to shoot whenever they have to. So it's just really taxing. So yeah, I mean, whatever they can do to help the load times is a good thing.
Oh, definitely. Now, another thing that they had in the movie, which I think is being more common, and I think I even read an article about a bunch of subs being fitted for this, was they had the mini sub that they sent out. And is it pretty standard now with all subs that they have a compatible, I don't even know what you would call it, compatible connection for a rescue vehicle like that?
So back in the day, that's what made the Dallas so famous. At least, maybe not. I mean, obviously, it was obviously in the Hunt Product or whatever. But that was in the submarine world. That's what made the Dallas really cool, was because it had this attachment on the back that none of the other submarines had, where you could attach this little like mini submarine that the SEALs use to do whatever they do. You know, I don't know what they do, but whatever they go out and do. You know, nowadays they tried to fit it more, because what the overall goal and what the U.S. Navy tries to do is, because we have a Navy that's designed to go all over the world, essentially, and fight multiple wars, we want to try to make them as versatile as possible. We want to make our submarines try to do everything, right? Like, if you want to get my honest opinion, I think that if there was an actual underwater submarine battle between two submarines, and one was the Astute class, which is the UK's fast attack, and then you went against the Virginia class, I think the Astute would win, because that boat's designed to actually fight submarines, right? It's not designed to shoot vertical launch missiles. It's not really designed to launch against the land. It's not really designed for that. So they could basically up the points in hunter killer instead. So they want to try to make them more versatile. So when it comes to any type of addition, so you want to add spec ops, right? You want to add some type of addition to the back. All of that stuff is becoming more and more integrated on all the boats, because that's an easy thing that they can do now. You know, it's just a quick little thing around the hatch, as far as I understand, and they can attach a little mini submarine to it. So
okay.
To go back to that, like, I don't think that every boat does. I think some boats do, and I think you're seeing it more often, is what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. But yeah, like you were saying with the Astute class, it makes more sense for the U.S. subs to be more versatile, because, you know, we're not actively engaging in submarine battles at this time. Well, maybe we are. You know, it's all underwater. It's all secret. But we can do more than just engage other subs.
Yeah, trust me, there's been no underwater battles. That's one of those things that, like, at this point, and I think I told you guys this, I think it was maybe you, but at this point, like, if a torpedo gets shot, there's going to be nukes that are going to be really, really close behind it. So I wouldn't assume that anything's been shot since the Falklands, since the Conqueror went after the Belgrano. But, you know, the Falklands were asking for it. They went over there and fucking attacked the British. So, you know, what do you do?
Right. Yeah, there will be retaliation if anybody does something like that. You know, you can't really get away with it.
Well, and that's the only nuclear battle that's happened too, with a nuclear sub. Everything else has been just missiles from the U.S. launching into Syria, essentially, and Iraq and Afghanistan. But see, like VLS, that's what you see with VLS. They're trying to make American subs more versatile. They want every boat to have vertical launch missiles, because we generally will attack land. If we're going to attack anything, you're going to attack a base or an airfield, or, you know, who knows what they attack? I have no idea. But that's generally what they do, is they hit airfields and strategic strongholds and stuff. And so they like to have VLS on all the boats. That's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. You know, they're going to start building them into the new Columbia class and stuff like that. So.
Oh yeah, because I mean, you can
see
sneak
that versatility
in
a lot.
You know, you can just sneak in off the coast and launch them from forever away, you know, and then sneak out undetected.
Well, and see, those VLS missiles, like I said, you can load a thermonuclear warhead on there, and a Tomahawk. If you were to launch a Tomahawk from the Gulf of Mexico, so if you were like right off the coast of Galveston, you could hit Chicago with it, and that's just a cruise missile. That's just a slow cruise missile.
Wow.
You know, we could hit ships with that thing. You know, that's not even a ballistic missile. That's not something that's going 8,000 miles an hour. That's something that's just cruising, you know, low on the ground at, you know, 600 miles per hour, whatever subsonic speed it is. And it can go all the way to Chicago. And that thing can have a low yield nuke on it, which is what they've been talking about lately with these low yield nukes. And they want to bring them back, which basically turns fast attack submarines into nuclear attack submarines. Like they have nuclear missiles on them again.
Dang.
We had them on there before, but they took them off in, I think, like early 2000 or something like that. They had some kind of treaty where they'd take them off, but now they want to bring them back. So now it's not just the ballistic missile submarines that we have out there. It's every submarine that we have out there.
Dang. Yeah, that's that's a game changer right there.
Yeah, it makes a big difference because, you can take out a whole battle group with one missile. All you got to do is just hit it in the center, just blow this nuke up in the middle of the ocean and take out a whole battle group, and you can just go away. So it really, really changes the game.
Yes, it does. Well, Eric, I hate to cut this short, but we are out of time for the evening. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And be sure to look out. You said your interview with A&E will be on in the beginning of December, correct?
Yeah, it's actually Biography, I think, is the technical channel that it's actually going to be under, but it's like a subsidiary of A&E. But yeah, so look on the Biography channel on YouTube, and you can see some of the previous ones where they did AMAs. You can kind of get a feel. I think I'm actually going to be doing another AMA on Reddit that day, as far as I understand it. So you check out the AMA page too, subreddit, and then make sure you check out the submarine subreddit and keep up to date there. I think you should be able to find it.
Definitely. We will be posting links to all these things so all of our listeners can stay up to date with it, and be sure to check it out. And thank you again so much.
All right, buddy. Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Submersion. Find us on SoundCloud and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Can't get enough of us? Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every Thursday. And if you like what you heard, please go ahead and give us a rating.